Hello, my dear friends. Operator Starsky here. It's a big pleasure to see you guys today with us on my channel. And I'm very, very happy to introduce my brother, Nuckin Futs. Yuri, can we say your name, by the way, or like...
Yeah, you can use
You,
my real name.
you can say it yourself if you like.
Uh, Paul Smith is actually the real name. Yuri's the nickname that was given to me when I was in Ukraine.
That is so cool. And guys, I believe that Yuri doesn't need introduction at all. Paul, sorry, because he's like a living legend among Ukrainians, especially Ukrainian soldiers, especially his comrades, not only his comrades, but everybody who saw that crazy video, ammo, ammo, and you receive grenade launcher. It was insane. But for those who don't know you, I think it would be a good idea that if you would tell just a bit about yourself.
Should we go to the ammo or even further back, or where do you want me to start?
Just a couple words of what you do, why you're fighting, whatever you feel like telling about yourself.
Originally from California, went out to Ukraine in 2008, moved to Ukraine in 2012, saw this war between Russia and Ukraine coming from even further back out. And then when stuff started, when Maidan revolution started in 2013, and then annexation in 2014, I started helping my friends and brothers in Ukraine prepare. And I told them when Putin invades, I'd be out there fighting with them. And in 2022, I shut down my factory, which I'm sitting in right now. It took me a couple weeks to shut that down. And then I was out in Ukraine on March 13th of 2022.
Did you participate in the Revolution of Dignity, or did you have friends who were there?
I had friends. I had lots of friends there. So about a week before that started, I had to return back to the United States because my visa at the time had expired. And when everything kicked off, I wanted to fly back out to Ukraine, but then there was the possibility that because I had overstayed the visa, I could have not been let into the country. I could have been stopped at the border, and then, but then at that time, my friends knew what was going to happen after Lukashenko left, or not Lukashenko, Yanukovych left. After he left the capital and fled to Russia, we already knew what was going to happen. So my friends were like, hey, we need you as a recipient of equipment to send it all in bulk, because they were buying up stuff, from websites here and there, and shipping all that stuff out to Ukraine would have been too expensive. So they shipped it to me, I packaged it, and then I shipped it in large bulk orders to them in Ukraine for much cheaper. So I wasn't even able to participate in any of the fighting or the training until 2015. So I flew out there in 2015, went up to the front line through Mariupol, up into the front line, trained guys up there near the front, came back to Lviv, where I have an apartment in Lviv. Stayed there for a little bit, talked with some other guys, returned back to the United States, and then returned in 2016, where the guys were developing stuff with the drones, so the droppers, and they were trying to mount a dishka on the bottom of a drone. And since I have an engineering background, they were doing like stuff with manual mills and lathes and 3D printers and stuff. And I was like, I could really help out. Went back to the United States and actually started my manufacturing company in 2016 because of that.
People are asking whether you can show them your factory, your workshop.
For the moment, no. Everything that's behind me has been sanitized. Stuff that's on the other side of this machine is sensitive equipment. And then everything that you see behind me, there's a ton of boxes and stuff that normally sit there when nothing's in use. It's all pushed to that back corner. I
Guys,
will do a
OPSEC.
video soon. Yeah, it's Operation Security. Like you and I, we talked the other day about the things I was making and the reasons why I'm not posting that on the internet, because it's just Russia's going to find it out and they're like, oh, well, this is a unique way of doing something. So then they go ahead and they mass produce it on a level larger than what I can do. And then now we have, like the FPV drones. There's a video on my Instagram of me with an FPV drone flying it like this to the sound. We're best friends. We're going to get soft tacos later. That was actually shot in September of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me not to post anything about it because it was still an experimental weapon system. And now we see how devastating these things are. Now Russia started using them, in mass after I had already left Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
But, they see some of the stuff that I'm doing, some of the other Russia, even if it's a small Russian firm, they can say, well, we're going to start doing it the way that Yuri's doing it, or they're going to try to figure out what I'm doing. They're going to copy it. And then now it's just going to be a lot harder for Ukraine, in the long run. Because, let's say Ukraine wasn't doing any of the videos of the FPV drones. I do know for a fact the first few drones that our team used, Russia had no idea what had hit them. Their tank just exploded. So, just think about the tactical advantage Ukraine would have kept if, Russia still hadn't caught up with the FPV drone.
Yeah, well, this thing is inevitable, unfortunately, and eventually they get technologies that they didn't have before. Same with us. When we received a completely intact Ka-52 helicopter that was landed in Hostomel, the same thing basically.
I remember.
We got it completely intact, maybe a bit damaged air intakes and turbines, but everything else worked with all the aiming modules and stuff. So, guys, the less you talk, the longer you live. That is a rule. What I wanted to do right now was mind if we have a small update from Ukraine, because it's really important. Guys, just briefly, so as you probably know, Russian tanks entered Russian Kursk Oblast. Why it's important is because those guys come from the apparently Russian units that fight against Russian terrorists. I used word Russian 5 times in one sentence. Doesn't make sense at all. So there are unknown people right now fighting in Kursk against Russian regime. Okay, I believe they could be either aliens or reptilians. Yesterday, I assumed that they were Chinese, which makes perfect sense to me. Who literally bought tanks in the grocery store, and now they're attacking Russian Kursk, trying to liberate it. And we have several updates from this area. One is Russian column that was going to support the troops that were fighting against those unknown armed people. It was completely destroyed and obliterated. We have a footage showing this column. Footage comes from Russians who basically made this footage. And we also know that apparently in the same column there was this Russian propagandist called Evgeny Podubny. He's extremely known in Russia. He's Russian so-called combat reporter, but in reality, he is like literally a Russian propagandist. He was killed. What we know right now is that a drone attacked his vehicle and he became good. And also, we know that today approximately, so like it's crazy. One report says that there is confirmed information, confirmed not by me but by the source, that 300 Russians gave up to those unknown forces that are currently taking Kursk. The number seems like impressive, right? But there is a footage showing Russian POWs with white flag that gave up to Ukrainian soldiers. Ukrainian soldiers on the Ukrainian side of the border in the area of Suja. Let us see this video once again. You can see quite a crowd of people walking to the Ukrainian positions on the Ukrainian territory. Suja is a checkpoint. This is how it looks like right now. And just so you could understand where it's located, let me switch real quick to the map. So this is Kursk Oblast, and right now in Suja, this is a tiny village on the border with Ukraine, Russian village Suja. Also, we know that at least 3 villages lost absolutely all communication with the Russian side, so they cannot contact anybody there. They have zero information about what's going on there. I just wanted you to know this information. It seems really, really important. And let's return to our guest here. By the way, what do you think about those events that are currently taking place in Kursk? Any ideas who can that be? Like Chinese?
I mean, I'm getting a lot of White Russian, Red Russian vibes from, there's so many parallels to World War I out there. So it could be anybody's guess.
Literally could be anybody. Could be like Chukchas. I don't know. Could be freaking Buryats. Easily. The problem is the guys don't comment anything. I asked guys that I know from, I'm talking about the Russian freedom fighters, and they they have no idea. So until we have any, official comments, we can imagine whatever we can. But yeah, tell me this, bro. Why American decided to go to Ukraine and fight? And before you answer this, please tell me: do you have, like, I know that you do, but you do have combat experience, right? Before Ukraine.
Yes. So I was in the U.S. Army 2008 to 2012. I went to Ukraine before I joined the army in 2008. And then shortly after Russia's attack on Georgia, I joined the U.S. Army. Did 4 years, was going to re-enlist. However, in 2010 was during the presidential elections in 2010, Ukrainian presidential election, had kind of changed my mind. And I got out of the U.S. Army in 2012 and then moved to Ukraine in 2012. I like the people. I like the culture. I like the country. It's a very beautiful country. It's very friendly people. I enjoyed my time spent there. And it wasn't just as a tourist. So a lot of people, they will go to a country and they're like, oh, I like this country a lot because they went to just the tourism areas, right? But when I was out in Ukraine, my friend would actually take me places to like villages and stuff outside of the major cities and stuff to like introduce me to their family, like their grandparents or whatnot, who've never met like an American. They're like, oh, this is my American friend. He's from California. And then they would just show me around, and, you know, the grandparents would like stuff food into me.
That's what they do all
big,
the time.
It's like these big banquets. I'd be like, oh, my friend's coming, and then they're like making like everything, and you know, I'm trying everything. So I actually really liked that experience. I really liked the people, so I decided I was going to move to Ukraine. In 2008, I was actually a lot of people just don't know this about me. I was really pro-Russian, you know, from early 2000s until maybe around 2010. Like I thought, you know, when my friends from Ukraine who came to America invited me to go to Ukraine to visit them, I was like, well, okay, it's just, you know, it's a neighboring country to Russia. They're, you know, it's a brotherly nation. And my ultimate goal eventually was to go to Russia. But then when I went to Ukraine and I made these friends, and then I started talking with some of the individuals who kind of knew better with, because I was like, oh, he's so great. He's removing corruption. He's rebuilding Russian economy since the disastrous 90s. And he's like, no. Putin's not this great guy that you think he is. And then I was like, okay, what do you know? And then they told me, you know, what his plans were and his goals were. And Georgia was one of the first eye openers for me. And then the election in 2010 was the final eye opener for me. And then that's when I just started going all in to being pro Ukrainian. So I enlisted. I was in the United States Army, Afghanistan, 2011 into the beginning of 2012. Got back from Afghanistan a couple months later. Got out of the U.S. Army and just moved to Ukraine. And I was actually, when the Revolution of Dignity kicked off in the end of 2013, I was actually going to stay in the U.S. for New Year's, submit my passport to get a 5-year visa, and then return back to Ukraine with this longer visa, and then work on permanent residency and stuff at that point.
You have plenty of Ukrainian friends, as far as I understand. I have honor to be one of them. I really do. And how do you find Ukrainian soldiers, let's say, like your comrades in the unit that you served in? Is it hard to communicate with them? Are they good guys? How do they treat foreign soldiers in general?
It wasn't really too hard for me to communicate. Those who don't know, I was self-teaching myself Russian from like early 2000s until about around 2010. Then I switched over to Ukrainian. And when I lived in Ukraine, I actually spoke Ukrainian fairly fluently. And then it's just the fact that from 2014 all the way to 2022, there was only a few times I really used Ukrainian and it had gone down. A lot of my guys in my unit kind of spoke good enough English for me to communicate with. But since I've been communicating with my Ukrainian friends who have a range of 0 English skill up to fluent, like I learned really how to talk to them and, you know, communicate what I needed them to do, or they communicate what I needed them to do, or what they needed me to do. So it wasn't that hard. While I was with the Ukrainian unit, I actually formed my own team, and I had my own team of foreigners for a little while, until, you know, my 3rd Humvee explosion, my 3rd injury. Back in June, I was given notice by the person who was storing my machines that he was looking to sell the property and he needed me to get the machines out of there. So I was going to wait until July 22nd, which is my 1-year anniversary of signing my contract with the MOD, that I was going to break contract after the 22nd, fly back to the United States for a month, get the machines out of that property, move them to another storage place temporarily, and then go back and fight. But then while I was injured, I went back to Lviv to recover a bit. And some of my friends had spoken to me, voicing their opinions of me, instead of fighting, utilizing my engineering skills and capabilities to help bring spare parts and other equipment to Ukraine. And then I had made that decision, instead of moving them into storage here and going back to fight, I was actually going to try to move them from here to Ukraine and then utilize them in the factory space I had set up in Ukraine.
We have a question from Velvet Magneta. Can we hear you speak Ukrainian, please? Can you say something like say hello to the people in Ukrainian?
Sure. Only a little. Oh God. Even now, I've been back from the United States for almost a year now, and since I only learned to speak, you really need to learn to read, write, and immerse yourself into a language. So, give me something easy to say, or say something relative.
Yes, say hello.
Що?
Hello.
Що? Добрий день.
Добрий день. Добрий день. Добрий вечір, ми з України.
Добрий день.
Yeah, sounds genuinely, seriously. I would never tell that you're a foreigner.
One of the few things when I was learning Russian, one of my friends, when I was actually out in Ukraine, they told me a pickup line to use on girls.
Okay.
It's Russian, and they're like, oh, it just means, hey, I'm American. You're very beautiful. Let's go out or something. But it wasn't that.
Bro, you're disappearing. Bro, your connection. I hope that our guest can refresh the page. In the meantime, I will show you some of the pictures. Bro, we cannot hear you. You're hanging. Please, if you can, refresh the browser and join us again. I really, really hope that you can hear us. This is like interesting thing, because 2023 I met Paul for the first time. It was when a lot of my viewers were asking like, do you want to make an interview with like a Russian blogger? I wasn't acquainted with Sanctioned Ivan before that, and I was like, no, guys, like seriously, don't even ask. But I decided that I can, instead of that, I can make an interview with American machine gunner fighting in Ukraine, and it was great. We still have that interview on my YouTube channel. You can check it out. There's plenty of stuff. We were visiting this museum of destroyed Russian vehicles. Not museum, but like exhibition of destroyed Russian vehicles on Mikhailivska Square in Kiev. I spent 2 hours literally listening to Paul's war stories, and it was insanely cool. Here, that's... Oh, okay. Paul is joining again. Hi, buddy.
Sorry about that. One of the issues with being inside the shop, where the router's located, compared to where the did.
No problem, no problem. Don't worry. In case of what, you can just reload the browser and rejoin. It's very easy. So I was showing your pictures, and I was telling how we met at Mikhailivska Square. I believe it was like in 2023 when my viewers asked me
it was,
to.
2022.
2022 even.
It was literally a month after my viral video.
Yeah.
And exactly a month before I hit the anti-tank mine.
Yeah. Guys, I believe that you saw that video. If you didn't, just Google American shouting ammo. You will find that.
I mean, it's like my most popular video on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, well, this is how you go down in history.
Second most popular video is because everybody wanted to armchair general the crap out of what I was doing.
Yeah. Can you tell us about that video with the ammo? Like, I know that you already told several times about it on my channel, but still, it's really, really cool to hear. Hello, hello. Hello. Can you hear us? Bro. Guys, there was this problem when, the sound would disappear for some unknown reason. And we had to tweak that shit. I'm really, really sorry about it. So, I hope that...
I... No idea what's going on. You're frozen on my side.
Oh, shit. Just reload it, bro. Just reload it. Just a second. Reload. Guys, he's not muted. I believe that I'm muted or frozen. Happens all the time. This is my channel. I mean, like, everybody already got accustomed to this. Okay. Yes.
Let me... No, I could... You had frozen. I could still hear you.
Uh-huh. Okay, but we can hear you and see you well.
Yeah.
Great.
But I have no idea what you're asking.
It's a sabotage, I believe. Tell us about that story with your guys storming the village and all the stuff with those grenade launchers. When you shot the dude with RPG.
So basically, a couple days prior to that video, we were in Humvees. We were trying to bring a tank out from cover. It was too far away to hit with an in-law, and it was inside one of its ditches, so we couldn't lock it with a javelin. And this is kind of before FPV drones were really a thing. So we drove out into a field. We started shooting that trench, hoping that the tank would come out to shoot at the Humvees. And then what would end up happening was we had some tanks in a tree line that they were going to shoot at the Russian tank when it popped its head out. It didn't pop its head out. We came back. They started shelling the field with artillery. While we were there, we were reloading the 50 cal. I had a rocket up in the turret with me. A few missions prior to that, we did an assault where we pushed. The Ukrainians were pushing on a trench. We pushed. We provided fire with the 50 cals, and then we were throwing rockets out of the Humvee to the Ukrainians that they could use, and then we got out of there. So from that moment, I had rockets up in my turret. And then on the second drive around, I had popped out of the I had the rocket in the turret. My 50 cal had jamming issues. I was using motor oil, and I was in the dust cloud of the Humvee in front of me. So I took the rocket out of the turret and I fired it at the trench. And then the commander had saw this on the drone footage, and he asked what had happened. And then the guys were like, Yuri fired a rocket. And the commander's like, do it again. So, we went back out there. They passed me up 2 rockets this time. I fired both of these rockets at the Russian trench, and the tank still didn't show, so we left for that mission. Then when we went back to the base, the commander was like laughing and thought it was the most amusing thing, and then he asked if it was possible for me to use the Humvee as a platform to launch rockets from, and I was like, of course it is. And then he started this plan where that village to Novopody, they would park tanks right there. And he was saying, since I already destroyed 1 tank in the morning when we raided a village on foot, he thought that, hey, if we take the Humvees, we can drive up to this village really quick, and then Yuri can destroy these tanks with AT-4s, while the Russians were asleep. And then we're just suppress the crap out of the village so Yuri can destroy these tanks. So the day before we trained, the guy that was in passing me the rockets, his name was Hooligan. That entire day before, while every Ukrainian is, talking and just zeroing the weapons and stuff, he and I were in the Humvee, and I was just training him how to pass me up rockets, because at that time I hadn't figured out how to put AT-4s up in the turret with me where they'd be secured and not knock around. So when we got to the village, he can't see out of the Humvee. I start shouting down at him, and he just starts passing me the rockets, thinking, there's the tanks. I'm going to start blowing up the rockets. And I was like, no, there's no tanks here, but I wanted to get back into the fight with the 50 cal. And then, you see the Russian that was inside that window. He started shooting at me. You could see the rounds, skip, and then the 2 rounds hit the turret. I had ducked down, and then I had popped up with the AT-4 and took out that window. And I later found out that the guy that was inside that house had died from that AT-4, and then reloaded the 50 cal, spun it around. And then at that split second, I saw that one Russian guy running with, one of the RPGs on his shoulder, and I shot him, which caused his rocket to fly off into, because he was coming around to flank the Humvees. There were 3 Humvees right behind where I was. So he was running with this rocket
explosion, that explosion is on the video there. Guys, yes. If you watch this video, you can literally see Paul shooting in that direction. Then there's this big bang and this cumulative stream. It was really cool. And you were also wounded several times because, we meet with Paul in Ukraine. It's like either over sushi or like in the hospital somewhere. I remember that we were visiting you with Andrew Mercado and Alex, I believe, was with us.
Mm-hmm. That was the 3rd time. That was the 3rd Humvee that had been exploded that I was injured. The AT mine, I just had some shrapnel in my legs. I wasn't too injured from that, but then, I was also injured from a tank shell. I was injured from an artillery landing almost on top of me. So there was a couple more times that I was injured that we didn't get to meet. But the photo that you showed at the beginning of the stream, that was in February. We were getting sushi, and that was after the Hornet missile had hit our Humvee.
And you had a fragment in your hand.
Hand, yeah. And then my orbital was fractured. That's why my eye looked black.
Mm-hmm. I'm showing that on the screen right now. The fragment.
Mm-hmm.
And as for your Humvee, can I show this photo that you sent me, or like better not, like of that Humvee that was destroyed, and you wanted to bring it back?
Yeah.
Let me see. I believe here it is. Yeah, that was your car, right?
Let me. We got like a 10-second delay between what I can see and what you have. Yeah, that was the third Humvee that was hit by I'm assuming a 120 millimeter mortar. We had suppressed their larger tube. What's that?
Yeah, please go on.
We had suppressed their larger tube and rocket artillery right before our run into the assault that trench. So the only things that the Russians can use against us at this time are either 82 millimeter mortars, which I got hit by in one of the Humvees, but like it did no damage to the Humvee, and then a 120, which was that the little crater you see right in front of the front left portion of the Humvee.
Mm-hmm. What can you say about Russians in general? Are they good soldiers? Do they suck? In your opinion, like generally, was it easy to fight against them, or it's vice versa? It's like hard. What makes them? I don't know. What makes them so much feared on the West?
So I think it's just their propaganda with their equipment. When we were fighting in the Mykolaiv region, we were actually going behind enemy lines. I showed you the video where we went behind the enemy lines and there were two BMPs there, and I tried to fire a rocket at one of the BMPs. Like we were already like maybe half a kilometer behind enemy lines when we came up upon those two BMPs. Our mission was we were going to drop these Swiss or Swedish anti-tank mines that they had these magnetic triggers on. And we were going to drop them into this field where the Russians would bring their tank, would fire at the Ukrainian positions, and then retreat their tank again. So we just decided we drove between two Russian positions, drove into where this field was, and we were going to drop these mines. And then that's when we saw those two Russian BMPs. So it was easier back then because they were so spread out. But now that the Russian lines basically consist of just the east, and then they have multiple positions basically on top of each other, it's become difficult. They were overconfident at the beginning of the war, which shows with the miles-long convoy into Kiev, the fact that so much equipment and aviation stuff was destroyed within the very first portion of the very beginning of the war. So, you got those helicopters and those jets being shot down and people filming them. Since then, they've kind of adapted, but they lost a whole bunch of their professionally trained troops to being killed and wounded in action and stuff. And the troops that they have now that they're flooding the front lines with, we captured some guys, and the guy was like, last week I was at my home in, wherever in Russia he was from, and we had just captured that guy's unit and those guys from the trench, and he had no real military training or experience. Russia's just general greatest advantage is the massive amount of stockpiles that they've had since the Soviet times. The ammunition that they're pulling in from Iran and North Korea, even though some of the North Korean shells don't function, having, even let's say 50% of the shells work, that's still 50% of the shells that they're firing at Ukrainian positions. Training and discipline wise, we were breaking into villages. The very first mission I went on, when we went behind enemy lines, I had no idea we were behind enemy lines. Like, we got to this village and we set up, and basically what my team was doing was they were going to plant a couple anti-tank mines on a path that we knew that they resupplied their trenches with, and they were going to get some intelligence of, which houses had the officers or the higher enlisted individuals were sleeping in. And when we got to this house on the outskirts of the town that we occupied, I had asked one of the guys on the team, and I was like, thinking, okay, well, we're almost to the front line. They're like, we'll wait here tonight and tomorrow do our mission and then go home. And I was like, oh, okay, so we're outside of the front line. We'll sneak into the front line and come back out. He's like, no, we're already like 3 kilometers behind the front line. So, like, we were in a village occupied by the Russians. They had no idea I was there. That mission I told you about when we first met in Kiev, back in October of 2022, we had snuck into that village of where the Russians were occupied. We captured 2 of them that were sleeping in that house that were supposed to be guarding. I took out that BAMD-4 tank, airborne tank that was positioned at the outskirts of the village, and we could have done more damage in the village. I went back to that village on the 1-year anniversary of the assault of that village. We had talked to some of the villagers. A couple of them had actually stayed in the village while the Russians occupied it. And the guy had confirmed that they had to tow the BMD-4 out of that position with another tank because it was damaged. So I knew for a fact that I didn't destroy it. I just, mobility killed it. They had to tow it back to, probably Kherson to get repaired. But at least I had taken that vehicle out of the fight for several weeks and made them expend parts to get it repaired. But the Russians, after that assault, for a week, were, on guard. They had thought that we had dug tunnels into the village, and that was the only way we got into the village, through their minefield. We were actually delayed because the front element of our group had to clear the mines, which were basically F1 hand grenades tied to sticks with tripwires attached. So those were kind of easy to spot and disarm.
So this is where people should find those legendary sex tunnels that Russians were talking about, apparently. I'm reading the commentaries on in the community post. Nuckin Futs, Yuri, his vids are legendary stuff. Yuri is Nuckin Futs tough as hell too. It would be good to know how the manufacturing is going and how he's doing. How are you doing generally?
So I'm doing okay. Manufacturing is going as fast as I can. Since I'm still here in the United States and still in California, I'm extremely limited on the things I can produce here. I have California state law that really forbids me from doing some of the stuff that I want to do. And then you also have federal law that says I can't build certain things. And even if I did make certain things, I would have to get State Department approval to export them from here to Ukraine. So a lot of the spare parts that I'm asked for, I can't do. Other components, the suppressors, the machine gun components and stuff, I can't build here. It's all going to have to wait until I get to Ukraine. 2024 basically is almost over in terms of the fighting season. We're going to have the winter again. Now that we got F-16s in Ukraine, I do anticipate that there's going to be an offensive, a Ukrainian offensive in 2025. And even when you and I spoke, I think on the first time in February, I think when you and I had spoke and we were discussing how long this war is going to be, just because of what we were doing, the prepping, I was like, if we don't get, if we don't get that push all the way to the Azov Sea in the 2023 offensive, it was going to be a long war. We were most of the missions I was doing, we were babysitting engineers as they cleared minefields, and they'd go out from the moment the sun set to almost when the sun rose to clear minefields. But again, just working on I'm working on some of the projects that I've been asked to, that I know I can do, some of the stuff that you and I had discussed. I have to offset some of that for manufacturing, for somebody here in the United States. I have a whole bunch of previous projects I've been working on before the war started that people were interested in, some of my friends and stuff. So I've been working on some of those projects in order to pay for the material and stuff. I've taken up a part-time job here in the United States, just basically to cover my living expenses, because I still have to pay my cell phone bill. I still have to buy food for me. Luckily enough, there's enough infrastructure here of friends and family that I'm not paying rent. I don't have a vehicle payment or anything. So I kind of lucked out with that. Or I would have to go out and focus either on 100% manufacturing for some company with my equipment here, which would leave me no time or ability to make stuff for Ukraine. Like those, these blocks right here, I got to put these on the mill in a day.
Ooh.
It's 4 inches thick, almost 14 inches long, and 12 inches wide.
Not bad. Guys,
those are
yeah.
Those are being built to the things that I told you I was going to be making with them.
Mm-hmm.
The one piece I did that was similar to that was 10 inches long, 6 inches wide. That sat on my mill for 4 days of manufacturing. Just the amount of material that needs to get removed to the size of that, and then the sculpting of the part using ball end mills and stuff. So I'm anticipating each one of those blocks are going to take about a week each.
Mm-hmm.
And due to the memory size of my machine, I'm going to have to load multiple programs and run basically each tool with one program. Just due to the size of the program, the machine won't be able to take all that program, and I won't be able to set up multiple of those onto the machine like normally I would do for a production job. So running one of those will take my machine out for like a week or so. So if I was to do any kind of manufacturing for another company or something, or if I started just building stuff off of Xometry, which is it's like an Uber, but for machine shops where you own the machines and stuff, and then other companies pay you to do their job for them. I wouldn't really be able to do that and balance out the stuff that I'm doing for Ukraine compared to the stuff that I would have to do to survive.
By the way, we have several comments from people who want to support you, and my friend Snow Chains. By the way, this microphone that you see right now, I have it due to Snow Chains, who is right now here in the chat watching the stream with us. So,
nice.
do you need a GoFundMe?
I tried to set up a GoFundMe when I first got back to the United States. For some reason, it's not allowing me to be set up. I stopped really doing donations when I got back here because, one, there's other Ukrainian groups and stuff that need stuff. There's people who donate equipment to me that I send out to Ukrainians, but generally, for the most part, if I do any kind of fundraising, it's going to be for material needs. Metal's expensive. This is a fixture plate that I just made. A part goes on top of this, it gets clamped down, and then machining work gets done on this. Material's expensive. That single plate of tool steel or tool aluminum that you saw me bring out, that thing was $75 I bought the other day. So, I mean, I might do a GoFundMe for raising funds for material, but there's only been a few of the small contracted stuff that I've been doing for Ukraine that would justify that. But I would have to figure out something in the meantime. One of the other things that I really didn't want a lot of people to get upset with is, you know, I've been watching how a lot of people fundraise for stuff. One thing I didn't want people to think I was doing was fundraising for money, and then because I'm still here in America, what am I doing with that money? If, you know, am I just taking that money and then just using it to pay my bills and just for me to live off of and not worry about stuff that I do? And that's really why I got the part-time job, to pay my bills. And then I haven't really focused on doing any fundraising because there are still a lot of Ukrainian teams and units that do need money. So if I do work on something that will be for getting funds and stuff for Ukraine, I will definitely have to post something about that and make a fundraiser for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have also Brandon Mitchell here in the chat, says hello. Guys, Paul has a PayPal, and I will drop this PayPal in the chat real quick. So, guys, if you feel like supporting Paul, please use this PayPal address that I just dropped in the chat. Is that the one? Yeah, that's the one. It's also in the description to this video. Please remember that. Check it, and please support Paul if you feel like doing this, because he's doing very, very important thing for his guys in Ukraine at this moment. What do you think about American supplies to Ukraine? I'm talking not about something like global, like F-16s, but rather small arms, machine guns. What do you find the most useful from your experience on the battleground?
American-made 40mm dual-purpose high-explosive grenades. So my team had captured or pre-stock GP30s and stuff. Those are just straight fragmentation grenade bodies. Sleazy Bryce, one of the team members of mine, he actually got shot point blank with one of those grenades and took some shrapnel in his eye and face and stuff on a trench raid of his back last year. Every Ukrainian that I've dealt with, that I've trained on how to use the 320 or the M203 or even the revolver 6-shot grenade launchers, they greatly prefer the 40mm grenade over the Russian stuff. And it's the same thing for like the Mark 19 compared to like the AGS-17. There was a video I had posted on my YouTube channel where we're getting lit up by an AGS-17, and like I hear the explosions going around me, and I thought they were submunitions. And I was more concerned about Russian submunitions than the AGS-17, and our Humvee was actually hit a couple times with the AGS-17 round, because those are just straight fragmentation grenades. They just blow up, pieces of metal fly out. they're not going to really do anything to the Humvee unless, fragments take out the tires or hoses or whatnot from, the oil hoses, oil lines and stuff. Then you have even the Javelin. The Javelin came out in the 90s. It's, I've trained Ukrainians on it. Ukrainians that I've trained on it have actually gotten tank kills with it. It's a bit more complex to learn how to fire than, like an NLAW or, a lot of the other simpler Russian rocket launchers. But just the smartness of the round, top attack abilities, the fire and forget lock on homing. I got trained on how to fire the Cornet. There was that mission I told you about where we went to go capture a Russian tank that was in the middle of a field in between the front lines. Ended up capturing a whole bunch of Cornet missiles from a Russian trench that we went into. I learned how to fire the Cornet. I was going to do a live fire of a Cornet missile. It never happened. I was trained on the American TOW missile, which is a far more superior anti-tank guided munition than the Cornet. And people are going to say, well, the range and the warhead, it's the guidance system and the methods of taking out a target, which makes a weapon deadly. Like, you could have the biggest weapon, you can have the longest range, but if it's not going to hit anything, it's not going to hit anything. And then I'm living proof that Cornets aren't shit. So, and then the fact that, I kept the Browning. A lot of people told me to switch to a Dishka or an NSV or a Cord. Even though we did have an NSV and a Dishka in my team, I kept the Browning because of its simplicity of use. When it does malfunction, the malfunctions are super quick and easy to correct compared to a Dishka. You're fighting the machine gun, you're fighting that recoil spring a lot harder on a Dishka than you are with a Browning. Just the overall quality of the American weapons that Ukraine's been getting, and the fact that, I remember when at the very beginning of the war, there was a mission where we were in a village, surrounded on three sides by Russians. I actually ended up having to leave my SCAR, which was a 5.56 weapon system, because we didn't have enough 5.56 ammo, and I actually ended up having an AK-74 for a while because
the ammo is plenty.
We had plenty back then. We had plenty of Soviet-made ammo, and then now it's unless we're capturing ammo from the Russians, a lot of the stuff that we're getting is from the Western nations, the NATO nations too. So.
Regarding AGS, I completely agree with you. I remember in 2017, my platoon was shot at using not 30 but 40 millimeter grenades, like the larger caliber. Yeah, the bigger one. And basically, the guys said that. They said the sound was literally as if it was like a firework, because the position was in the tree line, like as usual, and the grenades would just explode in the trees. And because the range of
the lethal range of the shrapnel?
Yeah, lethal range of shrapnel is something about 7 meters, which is like extremely bad for a grenade, I think. Nobody got hurt at all. Yeah, so Soviet automatic grenade launchers, comparing to what we were given by the United States, including Soviet automatic grenade launchers suck. But have you ever used something like Shmiel, those so-called flamethrowers with thermobaric charges?
I'd fired the RPG-30, which is the dual. It has a small missile or a small rocket and a
Yeah.
larger rocket. I fired one of those. The drop on that is absolutely horrendous. I have a Shmiel tube, but it was something that we had captured out of the village, so the Russians had already fired it. I haven't been able to use that. I fired the Russians' version of the AT-4. It has the thermobaric warhead, like the AT-4 has. I can't remember what they call it off their designation off the top of my head. But I got to fire off one of those. But, a lot of their thermobaric, I fired off a thermobaric RPG-7 round too. So, I mean, the Russians, one of the arguments I used to have against the AGS-7, going back to the AGS-17 and the Mark 19, is one soldier can carry the AGS-17 and the tripod at one time.
Yeah.
But you can't do that with the Mark 19, right? You need one soldier to carry Mark 19, one soldier to carry the cradle, and one soldier to carry the bipod base, or the tripod, basically. And again, it goes down to, it doesn't matter if the weapon system is light and maneuverable, if it's already in a defensive position, the Mark 19 is always going to win out every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Living example is our sergeant major who was shot. He and the guys were switching other guys at the position, and they were shot at from AGS-17 basically, and one of the grenades exploded right under his feet. So he yes, now he has he's partially disabled. He has both legs; they're saved. He lost pinky toe. That's it, and he's more or less fine. Of course, it's not like he can run, marathons and stuff, but he's alive. Legs are saved, balls and everything are in place. Nothing was removed, and he's alive. And the grenade literally exploded right under his feet. So that's just something people should know about Russian AGS. One thing I wanted to ask you is of course, it's funny to ask, but some people may not know it, having a different picture in their mind. How would you compare the war in Afghanistan to the war in Ukraine?
I had in Afghanistan 15 seconds of combat. That was it. The entire year I was out there, and it was just a couple of dudes with an RPG firing at our position, engaging them with a 50 cal. That was it. In Ukraine, I've probably shot maybe 30,000 rounds out of the Browning 50 cal in anger at Russian positions, while we were fighting. When I was at CAF, because I was in the Kandahar region, there was a couple times they would fire mortars and rockets and stuff into the base, and the closest that I'd ever come to getting hit by one of those rocket attacks was I was walking down this alleyway. The alarm had gone off, and I had just made the turn, and then inside that alleyway is where the round had exploded, maybe 50 or 100 meters, because it wasn't a super long way, but it was going in between two sections of tents. And even if I was still in that alleyway, I might have not got injured or anything. Shrapnel would have just not hit me. And that was only a couple times that we had ever been mortared. They tried to mortar our base. Our base was a small combat post. in the Arghandar River Valley area. They tried to mortar one of the bases, and all the rounds landed outside the base from where they were firing. So,
is there any? Because the reason I'm asking this is because I respect all kinds of veterans, like regardless whether they're combat veterans or just like service veterans. But there were cases, I'm sure that you know so many cases when guys who went through like Iraq, Afghanistan, they would come to Ukraine, and as soon as they're in combat, they go, okay, guys, where's air support? Where's like artillery support? And we say we don't have it.
Yeah, when I first got into Ukraine in March, I experienced a lot of that because a lot of the guys that I was with at the very, very beginning, they had separated us into two groups, the veterans and then the people who just wanted to come there to help. And out of the group of the veterans, my old team, they wanted to practice military operations in urban terrain. And I had already been in Ukraine in 2016 and had been shelled by Russians near one of the positions, or in 2015 near the front. And I was explaining to them that, doing urban terrains, like Kiev was still being sieged, but they weren't able to push, they still weren't able to push past where they were, right? So I was explaining, and then also back then, it also really felt like the war might just end after they left Kiev.
Yeah.
And
felt like
I was explaining to them that you're not going to be kicking in doors and searching buildings individually, fighting in this kind of war. Guys are gonna have to react to you're gonna have to react to contact, you're gonna have to react to indirect contact. You guys are gonna have to learn how to, quickly move from one fighting position to another, evacuate injured casualties. There's no Casevac. There was one time I had found a shopping bag that was orange, and I started cutting slits out of the shopping bag to tape onto headlamps and stuff, because a lot of people had headlamps, but they weren't red light. They were just white light headlamps. And this one guy, he was in the Marines, he was like, no, we can use that as a signal panel for medevac choppers. And I just looked this guy in the face. I was just laughing at him for like a good solid minute. And like, he had no idea. And I was like, there are no medevac choppers, especially on the front. And if we do get to a situation where there will be a medevac chopper, they're not going to need to look for us. And then I just continued cutting the bag into strips to tape onto red light, or to tape onto headlamps to make red lights. So there's a huge issue with some of the guys when I was recruiting them, when I was training them, that were joining my team or I was working with them. It's like, this isn't what you expect. A lot of the times we never had ammo or artillery parity with the Russians. You're going to go and assault a position. The Russians are going to fire artillery on you. You're going to sit there and wait until the Russians run out of ammo or counter battery starts working. And then either one of those things, like we had enough intelligence from the Russians' communications that we know when Russian artillery units are packing up and moving. We know when Russian artillery units are about to start working. We know when Russian artillery units are being suppressed so much that they can't work. So, like you get there. I told them, it's like, hey, you're gonna get shelled. You might be shelled for like 4 hours. The one mission, which was the very morning of the Mykolaiv offensive, which kicked off the Kherson offensive back in 2022, right before I had joined into the Humvees, I had no idea that mission I was going on that night was the beginning of the massive offensive. I just thought it was another prepping mission we were doing. And we went into a village to take out a ATGM that was set up at the corner of the village that overwatched this field. But basically what was going to happen is our tanks and infantry vehicles were going to push through this field into this village, occupy this village, and assault the positions on the other side. So when we did that mission, we were able to capture the guys, the Russian ATGM team. We went into the village, we set up an anti-tank ambush, and then the Russians just shelled us for from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., 14 hours. We were in that village just getting pounded by artillery. And then the tank came out, tank started shooting at us. A BMP came in from the other side, it started shooting at us. And then I had like these, the sabot part of the 30 cal rounds, because they were just punching through the house. They were punching through the house behind us, and they're just like, they lost all their momentum going through that house, but they still were flying, and then they'd either hit the outside of our house and you could hear them hitting the wall, or occasionally one would get lucky enough, fly in through a window, ricochet around in the room for a minute, and then like they're still glowing with the tracer element in the back and stuff. I grabbed 3 of those before we left the village that night. But that day, like the entire day, we were supposed to set up an anti-tank ambush. The Russians abandoned that village. They went to the trench system, and then they abandoned that trench system the next day. But all I did all that day was just sit in this house and just hope that one of the artillery rounds didn't take out the roof. And
That's
then even
reality.
going back to going back to even the Russian training, a Russian team could have easily surrounded that house and either forced us to surrender or chuck grenades into that house at that time. And this is back in August of 2022, when they did have more professional soldiers than they do now. They could have said, hey, because they knew where we were. They knew the house we were in because they were trying to destroy it with the tank, the BMP, and the artillery. And we could always hear the drone come overhead. And then when we heard the drone come overhead, we knew that they were about to drop artillery on us. And they could have came along that avenue. There was blind spots, like even though we were outside the windows, there were blind spots that they could have walked along the other house next to, gone to the house, and then just chucked grenades into the room we were in. And there would have been nothing we could have done.
Yeah. And imagine the celebration they would have, had they captured like a living American soldier.
Mm-hmm.
We would see you on the TV a lot.
They would have already captured. They had already captured a couple foreigners fighting by this time. But even while I was on these missions, I didn't have my phone on me. I didn't have my American passport. I didn't have my wallet on me. I didn't have any identification really with me other than my Ukrainian military passport. But the guys I was with, we were going to go down fighting. Like we had already discussed, we weren't going to get captured. They were going to have to take us out. So, we would have gone out fighting.
Yeah, we had same feelings in Hostomel, because when you don't know what's going on, it's like the most scariest thing, like when you don't know what's the situation. And when you don't know the situation, your imagination can draw all kinds of crazy shit, like Chechen ninjas, like parachuting from helicopters and shit like that, but nothing like that happened in reality. But back then, we talked with the guys there in the corridor of the first floor of the building that doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And we decided that if we don't have any ammo left, if we are locked there, then we will go down fighting as well.
I mean, it was the same thing for my.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the same thing for my friends at the Donetsk airport back in, 2015 and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
When they were holding on to the where they were holding the airport, and I was talking to some of them after they had gotten back out of there that what they were prepared to do if because they had been cut off, and then they didn't get cut off, and then it was going back and forth and stuff for a while. So
yeah. And those guys, back in the days before the full-scale invasion, the battle for the Donetsk airport, a lot of people don't know about it properly, probably, but it was considered maybe the most heroic episode in the Russian-Ukrainian war, because this airport has been defended for 242 days, according to other sources for 244 days, by just a handful of soldiers. And there are all kinds of Russians, including their Chechens, including Omega, Wimpel, all kinds of super orthodox Spetsnaz with magical powers, trying to kill them. And the only reason Russians succeeded was because, again, never trust Russian word. Never make agreements with them, because they agreed to take their wounded and dead from the second floor of the airport. First floor was controlled by our guys. Second floor was gray zone. And our guys agreed. And they, instead of removing the bodies of Russian soldiers, they brought explosives, and in the end they exploded the charges. They detonated the charges, and the building collapsed on top of our guys. So you don't make agreements with them. To everybody who has any illusions about Minsk agreements, that's the reason why they didn't work, because Russians don't keep their word. Bro, I think we should be saying goodbye very soon to our viewers, because it's been more than 1 hour. But before that, please tell me this. Is there any, what's your magic? Is there any technique or something like that to keep you motivated and sane?
Not really. It was it's my home. I have property in Ukraine. So I'm defending it. I have all my friends that live out there. I'm defending them, their freedoms. And it was just, I was going to prepare. I had already prepared myself that if, I didn't make it, I didn't make it. But if I was going to go out, if I was going to go down, I was going to go down swinging. And even after the first anti-tank mine, after the Cornet missile, after Geo, my medic, he had lost his eye from the missile, I continued on fighting. It was literally those same friends really telling me in Lviv, it's hey, we really kind of need you to do more with your engineering skills than, just being on the front line fighting, for me to kind of realize that, I'd already trained hundreds of Ukrainians how to fire Western-made weapon systems, the AT-4s, the machine guns, the javelins, and those guys trained other Ukrainians. So I just wanted to go out on, I wasn't going to be. I was more terrified because I knew what it meant if Russia was to segregate Ukraine, what was going to happen next. I mean, we even see it now in what's going on in the occupied areas with forcibly conscripting Ukrainians living in those areas to fight Ukrainians on the Russian side.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and there are like it's a crazy situation because there are kids who literally were born already on the occupied territory. They have never heard any word in Ukrainian language, and even though they're Ukrainian, but Russians managed to basically assimilate them, like they did to Buryats, Yakuts, and all other nations that were conquered throughout the years and centuries by the Russian Empire. And it will be a problem in the future because one way or another, Russia will lose this war. Ukraine is not going to give up, never. And at the same time, we will have to think how to reintegrate those people back into Ukrainian society, considering they were brainwashed their whole life, like the kids who currently read history books in the schools in the occupied territory. And in those books, they read like heroic stories about terrorist Motorola or terrorist Givi, and other individuals. So that will be a long process, which is crazy, which I don't even want to think about it because I'm not an expert. I have no solution to this whatsoever. It's up to psychologists probably. But
it's
anyways,
yep. It's probably going to have to be the rebuilding efforts after World War II that Europe faced. So, because you had Italy and Germany both fanatical, and then within several decades afterwards, we see, how those people have changed from what they were experiencing, underneath fascism. My larger concern is after we retake all of our territory, because of the propaganda that Putin's been pumping and stuff, there's still going to be a huge division between Russians and Ukrainians. And unless something changes in Russia itself, there's a schoolboy right now in Russia who's going to be the next president in the next Russian president, whatever Russia looks like, and he might still be harboring this hatred and distrust of the West, as well as, Ukraine. And, until they understand that, the blatant lies from the Russians and can see that for themselves and be able to move on from that. There's still going to be problems between this for decades.
Absolutely. Okay, my friend, thank you so much for being with us today. It's always pleasure and honor to see you here. And I really, really hope that we can continue our tradition and have our traditional sushi sometime in the future. No idea how to make it happen. Dear friends.
I mean, you can always come to California. We have some of the best sushi out here.
I will try. I had such intention because there will be a lot of interesting processes happening in the United States this year. So I have such intention, but bureaucracy may be stronger than me sometimes. We will see. Yeah, but I wanted to say thanks to all of our moderators. They did great job today. As always, big thanks to all the members of my channel. Big thanks to all the viewers and everybody who supports Ukraine. Guys, please check out Instagram of my friend Paul. If you are not subscribed to his YouTube, please do that right now. And also there is his PayPal in the description to this stream. Please check it out. And you gotta know one really, really important thing. Even despite the fact that Yuri is Yuri, why do, like when you have 100 names, it's always complicated. Currently, Paul,
I mean, do you know where Yuri came from?
No. By the way, what's the story behind it?
All right. So, like I told a lot of people, and it's in my YouTube channel, I've been sending equipment, military equipment, into Ukraine, into my storage since 2010. So when the war kicked off, when I went to join the Legion, like everybody was like scrambling to get gear and equipment, and I had everything. And I was part of the second team I was a part of right before we went down to Mykolaiv. Guys were complaining about not having enough magazine pouches, not having grenade pouches, not having this or this. And I was telling these guys, like, hey, give me a list of all the stuff that you guys need. I can get it. So, I was getting them magazine pouches, grenade pouches, suppressors. If they had the monies for the optics, like EOTechs and ACOGs and stuff, I knew where to get these things. And when we were in Mykolaiv, all this stuff had arrived, and a lot of people first thought I was just, talking shit and just pretending that I was a bigger person than I really was. But then when the boxes first started coming from Nova Post, they were like, "Oh, this guy's legit." And then one guy was like, "You're like the Lord of War." And I was like, "No, no, no." And then they're like, "Oh, yeah, you're like Yuri Olaf, Nicolas Cage's character in the Lord of War." And then that's when they just started calling me Yuri, because if they needed it, I could get it to them. I could find it. I can get it. They got it, and then they were better equipped. So that's actually where Yuri originated from.
I see now. Well, that is well deserved, my friend. Okay, my dear friends, the man, the legend himself, Yuri, aka Nuckin Futs, in the United States, known as Paul Smith, my good friend and brother. It was so cool to see you today, and generally it's very I'm so much pleased every single time we meet. I hope that you're having a great day, as well as your second part. And please say hello. And dear friends, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It was a pleasure. As always, big thanks to everybody who stands with Ukraine, because this is the proper thing to do. My name is Operator Starsky. Paul, see you next time. As always, be safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.